The training base was alive before sunrise, boots stomping, orders echoing, and the sharp sound of discipline slicing through the cold morning air. Recruits lined up in formation, faces tense, hands trembling slightly. It was their second week at Marine Boot Camp, where pride met pain, and fear met reality. Among them stood Sergeant Alyssa Rhodes, calm, poised, and silent as steel. AUS, Marine instructor, former Special Forces operative, and one of the few women who had served in multiple combat zones. Her reputation traveled faster than she walked. Some respected her, others doubted her. That morning, as she entered the mess hall, a group of cocky recruits sat whispering, their eyes following her every move. "Man, that's her, the so-called Marine legend," one of them scoffed. "Looks more like a model than a soldier," another chuckled. Alyssa heard it, she always did, but she'd learned long ago, real strength doesn't shout. It shows. When she passed their table, one of the recruits, a tall young man named Miller, stood up. "Ma'am," he said, smirking, "mind showing us what makes you so special? Or is it just stories?" The hall went silent. Every recruit froze. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Alyssa turned slowly, her voice calm, like a storm before thunder. "Is that a challenge, recruit?" Miller shrugged. "Just curious. They say you're unstoppable. I want to see if that's true, or just Marine myth." His friends laughed nervously, but then, in a split second that no one could predict, he pulled out his training pistol, pressed it lightly against her forehead, and said, "Then show me what happens next." Gasps echoed through the mess hall. Dozens of recruits leapt to their feet, but Alyssa didn't move. Her eyes locked on his, calm, steady, unblinking. "You sure you want to find out, son?" she said quietly. For 20 heartbeats, no one moved. Then, it happened. In one blur of motion, she twisted sideways, her left hand striking his wrist with pinpoint precision. The gun flew out of his hand before anyone saw how. Her right elbow connected with his chest, hard. Miller was on the ground before his brain could register what happened. In 3 seconds flat, the instructor had disarmed, restrained, and immobilized him, using only technique, not anger. Silence swallowed the entire hall. The recruits stared in disbelief. Alyssa looked down at him. In combat, that delay, that 1 second of pride, gets people killed. This isn't a game, Marine. It's survival. She stood, her tone firm but calm. "You think strength is about muscle. It's not. It's about control, of your fear, your ego, your mind." Then she turned to the other recruits. "Every Marine you meet, man or woman, has fought their own war long before stepping into uniform. Respect that, respect them." The base commander, who had entered midway through the chaos, stood silently in the doorway. He'd seen it all. After a long pause, he said, "Lesson learned, Recruit Miller." Miller, still catching his breath, nodded, eyes lowered. "Yes, sir. Lesson learned, the hard way." "Good," the commander said, then looked at Alyssa. "Sergeant Rhodes, carry on." She gave a brief salute, then walked out, steady, unshaken, and silent as ever. But as she left, something changed in that room. The laughter, the arrogance, the whispers, gone. What remained was respect. From that day forward, recruits didn't just see her as the woman instructor. They saw her as what she truly was, a Marine who had earned every scar, every stripe, every ounce of silence she carried. Weeks later, on graduation day, Miller approached her quietly. "Ma'am," he said, his voice steady but humble, "I just wanted to say, I was wrong. That day in the mess hall, I thought I was testing your strength. But you were testing my character." Alyssa smiled faintly. "And what did you learn?" He took a breath. "That being a Marine isn't about proving you're the toughest person in the room. It's about having the discipline to not prove it." She nodded. "Good answer, Marine. You'll make it." He saluted her, this time, with respect earned, not forced. Later that night, Alyssa stood outside by the flagpole as the sun set over the base. The stars began to appear, one by one, steady and bright. She whispered softly to herself, "People will always test your limits, until you show them where they end." Then she smiled, proud not of her strength, but of the lesson she left behind. The incident in the mess hall spread across the entire base by sunset. Every recruit had a version of the story, each retelling it like some legendary Marine tale. But Alyssa Rhodes didn't care about rumors. She cared about results. And the next morning, She had one mission: to make those young men and women understand what it truly meant to wear the eagle, globe, and anchor. At 0500, the recruits were assembled on the obstacle field, the ground still wet with dew, the air sharp with chill. The silence was broken only by the sound of boots and the clink of metal gear. Sergeant Rhodes walked out in full combat uniform, expression unreadable. Every recruit straightened instantly. No one dared joke today. Yesterday, she began, her voice steady, some of you saw something you weren't ready for. You saw what happens when arrogance meets discipline. But today, you'll learn why it matters. She turned toward the course. This field isn't just an obstacle course. It's a reflection of life. Every wall you climb, every rope you cross, every failure, it shows you who you are when things get hard. Her eyes swept over the line of recruits. Marine Corps doesn't care how tough you look. It cares how tough you stay when everything hurts. The recruits began running the course, mud flying, bodies straining. Rhodes moved among them silently, correcting posture, pushing harder, never shouting, just watching. Miller struggled on the rope wall, his arms trembling, but when his foot slipped, Rhodes was right there, steadying the line. Don't quit on yourself, Marine, she said. Strength isn't built from muscles, it's built from the moments you want to give up, but don't. He gritted his teeth and climbed again, the words burning into his memory. Hours later, when the training ended, the recruits sat exhausted, covered in sweat and dirt. Alyssa stood before them, mud on her boots too, not separate from them, but with them. Every one of you has a reason you're here, she said. Some came for pride, some for purpose, some because you had nowhere else to go. But the moment you put on this uniform, those reasons become one, to serve something greater than yourself. Her voice softened slightly. When I was your age, I thought being a Marine was about being fearless. But it's not. It's about doing your duty even when you are afraid. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's moving forward despite it. The recruits listened in silence. Some looked down, fighting emotion. Even Miller, the one who'd once pointed a gun at her, now looked at her with genuine respect. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Miller approached her again. This time, not as a student testing authority, but as a man seeking guidance. Ma'am, he said quietly, I wanted to thank you for not reporting me that day. You could have ruined my career right there. Alyssa looked at him, her expression calm. I could have, but punishment doesn't always teach what reflection can. Why did you spare me? He asked. She paused. Because one day, you'll face a real gun. And when you do, I want you to remember what you learned: control, not panic. Confidence, not pride. I didn't want to destroy your career, Miller. I wanted to save your future. He swallowed hard. You did, ma'am. You really did. Weeks turned into months. The recruits grew sharper, tougher, more disciplined. And whenever someone complained or lost focus, the story of that day in the mess hall came up again, not as gossip, but as a reminder. That one moment had changed the entire unit's attitude. Alyssa's methods were tough, but her lessons cut deeper than drills or rules. She taught them what it meant to protect others, to hold the line, to lead with heart instead of ego. When graduation day came, the recruits stood taller, not just in posture, but in pride. The base commander addressed them, his voice firm. You came here as kids looking for strength. You're leaving as Marines who've found it. And you can thank the people who taught you what true strength looks like. He turned toward Alyssa. Sergeant Rhodes, front and center. The recruits erupted in applause, genuine, heartfelt. Miller's voice rose above the rest. Semper Fi, ma'am. The others joined in unison. Semper Fi. Alyssa saluted, her eyes glimmering with pride. She didn't smile. Marines rarely do in uniform, but deep inside, she felt it. The quiet satisfaction of knowing she had not just trained soldiers, she had built warriors. That night, long after the ceremony, Alyssa sat on the base steps, looking at the stars above the flagpole again. The same stars she'd seen countless times overseas, in the silence after the firefight, in the peace after chaos. She thought of every recruit who had walked through her training. The arrogant ones, the broken ones, the brave ones, each one had left a mark, just as she'd left one on them. Her radio buzzed softly with the commander's voice. Rhodes, good work today. You've made this place stronger. She smiled faintly, whispering to herself. Strength isn't about winning fights. It's about teaching others how not to start them.